Armed Services Subcommittee hearing on Seapower will come to order. We convene this afternoon to receive testimony on achieving the 355-ship Navy, and we received testimony today from former Reagan administration officials. We welcome our three distinguished witnesses: the Honorable John F. Lehman, Jr., former Secretary of the Navy; the Honorable Everett Pyatt, former Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Shipbuilding and Logistics; and the Honorable William J. Schneider, Jr., former Associate Director for National Security and International Affairs at the Office of Management and Budget. Welcome, gentlemen. Our subcommittee is grateful for your decades of service and willingness to appear before us. Your experience and counsel will be invaluable as we consider options for increasing the size of our Navy and protecting our nation's security. Today's hearing represents another step in this subcommittee's effort to examine the Navy's 355-ship requirement. We have received a classified briefing on the basis for the requirement. We've heard from shipbuilders and suppliers, held a shipbuilding hearing with Navy officials, and will meet with naval analysts next week. Our actions this year will set a firm foundation for an intelligent and responsible expansion of the fleet in the future. To that end, I would note that all members of this subcommittee have co-sponsored the SHIPS Act, legislation which would codify the Navy's requirement for 355 ships as U.S. policy. The full committee has adopted the SHIPS Act into the FY18 NDAA, and our House counterparts have done the same. The Seapower title also authorizes additional funding for 5 ships above the administration's budget request, while maintaining effective cost control measures on existing programs. The Navy's 355-ship requirement has received plenty of attention on Capitol Hill and in the press. It is important to put the desire to grow the fleet into proper historical context. The United States has embarked on naval buildups roughly every 30 years over the past century. In the 1910s, then in the 40s and 50s, and most recently in the 1980s, in response to emerging threats, technological development, and the condition of the fleet. This is now our time to lead. Our task is to increase the fleet size from 276 ships today to 355 ships as soon as practicable, an increase of 79 ships. In comparison, during the 1980s buildup, the Navy added 75 ships to the fleet in 8 years, from FY 1981 to FY 1988, according to the Congressional Research Service. I would stress that we need the optimal mix of ships. Tomorrow's Navy should not replicate the one we had in the past or the one we have today. In other words, this subcommittee has no intention of funding shipbuilding only for the sake of shipbuilding. Our witnesses took the 1980s buildup from a vision to reality and proved many naysayers wrong along the way. The 1980s buildup was based on a comprehensive naval strategy, thorough analysis, and sound acquisition practices. Our witnesses thought outside the box. Thank you. For example, they supported outfitting our ships with cutting-edge technology, but also brought battleships out of mothballs. Perhaps most important, once the Navy established the famous 600-ship requirement, the senior leadership, uniformed and civilian, rallied around it. The subcommittee is interested in lessons learned and insights for how best to proceed with the task at hand today. Specifically, I hope our witnesses will discuss the importance of strategy for embarking on a buildup and the necessity of getting buy-in from the White House, Secretary of Defense, the Congressional Defense Committees, and industry. Clear lines of authority and accountability for executing the shipbuilding program. Fixed price contracts and competition. Delivering ships at or below cost, on schedule, with the promised capability. Evaluating options related to existing ships, including extending service lives and reactivating decommissioned ships, and maximizing the use of the commercial industrial base. It should be an interesting discussion, gentlemen. We're delighted to have you. I look forward to your testimony.